And we're going live in 3, 2, 1, boom! Hey there, welcome to Chillin Tuesday here on the 24th of November 2023. I'm Thundercloud, Mum calls me James, washing away the garbage, leaving rainbows after rains. Let's have some fun and linguistic games. Tonight, I'm doing a Charles Harpur special. The great-grandfather of Australian poetry, Charles Harpur, was born at Windsor in New South Wales in 1811 or 1812, maybe 1813. His father was a schoolmaster and gave the future poet all the education he ever received. In 1853, he published a volume of poems, among which were some sonnets, which won the admiration of the celebrated Sydney lawyer, Mr. Robert Lowe, now Viscount Sherbrooke. This is written in 1888, by the way. He at this time contributed to the Empire, the least successful and most brilliant of all Australian papers. It has been described as it's been described. Returning to the bush, Harpur married Miss Mary Doyle, a settler's daughter, by whom he had 5 children. He died in 1868, comparatively unrecognised and unknown, and recently his fame widely increased owing to an admirable edition of his poems published by Mr. George Robertson, who went on to become Angus and Robertson Books. Charles Harpur was, however, greatly admired by Henry Kendall at the time, who addressed 2 set of beautiful but simple verses to his memory. But I'm not going to be reading those out. All right, I'm going to have a sip of my chamomile tea to keep me calm. In my Australian Poetry Hall of Fame mug. You can get these on our website, australianpoetryhallofFame.com.au, along with lots of other merchandise that supports the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame. T-shirts, hats, sweaters, hoodies, a whole bunch of stuff, even notepads, backpacks, book bags, you name it. Check it out, australianpoetryhalloffame.com.au, and click on our store link there. You can also check out our Etsy store as well. We've got stuff. And meanwhile in Australia.com, because that's where we've got other stuff that supports this place, the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame. All right, moving right along. Charles Harpur. So I'm going to start with his longest poem first. I just read you out a short biography of his, and I'll be reading out of this book later, Australian Poets, 1788 to 1888. This was published by Griffith Farron and Company in 1888, so it's a pretty old book. I probably should be a bit more gentle with it. Anyway, it's great. It's a tough old book. All right, Charles Harpur. Now, before I get on to Charles Harpur, don't forget, coming up in just over, 4 weeks, we've got the Poets on the Mountain Festival here at Guyra. Yes, we've got some of the best bush poets in Australia coming here for the New South Wales Bush Poetry Championship, sponsored and auspiced by the Australian Bush Poets Association. And as well as that, the judges of the competition, who are Bill Kearns, Robin Sykes and Ray Essery, they're coming up here to put on a very special show. These are the 3 premier poets in all of Australia. There's really very few better than these 3. Well, they are the top of the top. Okay, there's a whole bunch of them all up there all together, and there's more of them, but they are 3 of the top. Yeah. So, Bill Kearns, the master of bull, Robin Sykes, the weaver of words, and the Mullumbimby man, Ray Essery, although he doesn't live there anymore, I believe. They'll all be here. And supported by Tom McElveen and Susan Ashton of Spiral Time doing the music. Now, tickets are $20, $25 for the upstairs dress circle balcony, where you get the best sound and the best view in the house. And you can get them on trybooking.com. Just go to our website, australianpoetryhalloffame.com.au events, and just follow the links and you'll find it, or go through our Facebook page as well. Right, Charles Harpur's most epic long poem was The Creek of the Four Graves. So this is quite a long piece of writing, so bear with me. The Creek of the Four Graves 1. The settler in the olden times went forth with 4 of his most bold and trusted men into the wilderness, went forth to seek new streams and wider pastures for his fast increasing flocks and herds, over mountain routes and over wild worlds clouded up with brush and cut with marshes perilously deep. So went they forth at dawn, at eve. The sun that rose behind them as they journeyed out was firing with his neither rim a range of unknown mountains like ramparts towered, full in their front, and his last glances fell into the gloomy forest's eastern glades, in golden gleams like to the angels' swords, and flashed upon the windings of a creek that noiseless ran betwixt the pioneers. And those new Apennines ran shaded o'er with boughs of the wild willow hanging mixed from either bank, or duskily befringed with upward tapering feathery swamp oaks. The sylvan eyelash always of remote Australian waters, whether gleaming still in lake or pool, or bickering along between the marges of some eager stream. Before them, thus extended wilder grew, the scene each moment and more beautiful. For when the sun was all but sunk below those barrier mountains in the breeze that o'er their rough enormous banks, deep fleeced with wood, came whispering down the wide upslanting sea of fanning leaves in the descending rays, danced dazzlingly, tingling as if the trees thrilled to the roots for the very happiness. But when the sun had wholly disappeared behind those mountains, oh, what words, what hues might paint the wild magnificence of view that opened westward, out, extending low. The heights rose crowding with their summits all dissolving as it seemed, and partly lost in the exceeding radiancy aloft. And thus transfigured, for a while they stood like a great company of archaons crowned with burning diadems, or tented o'er with canopies of purple and of gold. Here, halting, wearied now, the sun was set. Our travellers kindled for their first night's camp a brisk and crackling fire, which seemed to them a wilder creature than 'twas elsewhere wont, because of the surrounding savageness. And as they supped, birds of new shape and plume and wild, strange voice came by and up the steep. Between the climbing forest growths, they saw, perched on the bare abutments of hills, where happily yet some lingering gleam fell through the wallaroo, look forth east at last, night's front, and then westward the high massing woods, steeped in a swart but mellow Indian hue. A dusk, deep loveliness lay ridged and heaped, only the more distinctively for their shade. Against the twilight heaven, a cloudless depth, yet luminous with summer's fading glow, and thus a while in the lit dusk they seemed to hang like mighty pictures of themselves in the still chambers of some vaster world. At last, the business of supper was done. The echoes of the solitary place came in as in silver wonder wide about. To hear and imitate the voices strange within the pleasant purlieus of the fire, lifted in glee, but to be hushed ere long. As with the darkness of the night there came o'er the adventures, each and all some sense of danger lurking in its forest lairs. But nerved by habit, they all gathered round about the well-built fire, whose nimble tongues sent up continuously a strenuous roar of fierce delight, and from their fuming pipes, drawing rude comfort round the pleasant light, with grave discourse they planned their next day's deed. Wearied at length their couches they prepared of rushes and the long green tresses pulled from the bent boughs of the wild willows near. Then the four men stretched out their tired limbs under the dark arms of the forest trees that mixed aloft high in the starry air, in arcs and leafy domes whose crossing curves blended with denser intergrowth of sprays were seen in mass, traced out against the clear wide gaze of heaven, and trustful of the watch, kept near them by their master, soon they slept, forgetful of the perilous silence that lay all around them like a spectral world. And all things slept, the circling forest trees, their foremost boles carved from a crowded mass, less visible by the watchfire's bladed gleams that ran far out into the umbrageous and dark, beyond the broad red ring of constant light, and even the shaded mountains darkly seen, their bluff brows looming through the stirless air, looked in their stillness solemnly asleep. Yea, thence surveyed the universe first might have seemed coiled in rest, only that one dark cloud, diffused and shapen like a spider huge, crept as with scrambling legs along the sky, and that the stars in their bright colours still, cluster by cluster, glowingly revealed, and this slow cloud moved on, high over all, peaceful and wakeful, watched the world below. 2. Meanwhile, the cloudless eastern heaven had grown more luminous, and now the moon rose above the hill, when lo, that giant cone, erewhile so dark, seemed inwardly aglow with her instilled in radiance, while the trees that fringed its outline, their huge structures dwarfed by distance into brambles, and yet all clearly defined against her ample orb, out of its very disk appeared to swell in shadowy relief, as they had been, all sculptured from its surface as she rose. Then her full flight in silvery sequence still, cascading forth from ridgy slope to slope, chased by mass the broken darkness down into the dense brushed valleys, where it crouched and shrank and struggled like a dragon doubt, glooming a lonely spirit. His lone watch the master kept, and wakeful looked abroad of all the solemn beauty of the world, and by some sweet and subtle tie that joins the loved and cherished absent from our side, with all that is serene and beautiful in nature, thoughts of home began to steal into musings when on a sudden bark a bough cracks loudly in a neighbouring brake against the shade side of a bending gum. With a strange horror gathering in his heart, as if his blood were charged with insect life, and writhed along in clots, he stilled himself and listened heedfully till his held breath became a pang. Naught heard he. Silence there had recomposed her ruffled wings, and now deep brooded in the darkness, so that again mused on and reassured. But there again, the crack upon crack, awake, O heaven, let have finds hell's worst friends burst howling up into the death-doomed world of whence, if not from diabolic rage, could surge a yell so horrible as that which affrights. The shuddering dark beings as fell are near, yea, beings in their dread inherited hate, awful vengeance from a hell's worst friends are come. In vengeance, for behold, from the long grass and nearer breaks arise from bounding forms of painted savages full in the light, thrown outward by fire that roused and lapped the rounding darkness with its routing tongues more frequently than before, as though even it had felt the sudden shock the air received from those terrific cries. On then they came, and rushed round upon the sleepers, three of whom but startled and then weltered, prone beneath the first fell blow dealt down on each by three. Of all the most stalwart of their pitiless foes, but once again and yet again rose to his knees under the crushing toes of huge clubbed null, till his own warrior blood was blinding him, for he was one who had with misery nearly all his days lived lonely, and who therefore in his soul did hunger after hope and thirst for what? Hope still had promised him some taste at least of human good, however long deferred. And now he could not even in dying lose his hold on life's poor chances still to come. Could not but so dispute the terrible fact of death. In the death's presence, strange it is, yet oft is seen this fortune's pampered child consents to death's untimely power with less reluctance, less despair than does the wretch who hath ever been blown about the world, the straw-like sport of fate's most bitter blasts. So, though the shadows of untimely death inevitably under every stroke that thickened and more against them, still the poor wretch would not cease until one last great blow dealt down upon his head, as if in mercy gave him to the dust with all his many woes and frustrate hopes. The master, chilled with horror, saw it all. From instinct, more than conscious thought, he raised his death, charged tube and that murderous crew firing saw one fall ox-like to the earth. Then turned and fled, fast fled he, but as fast his deadly foes were thronging on his track. Fast for in full pursuit behind him yelled men whose wild speech no word for mercy hark. And as he fixed the forest beasts as well in general terror, through the breaks ahead, crashed scattering, or with maddening speed athwart. His course came frequent. On, still on, he flies for dear life, and still behind him hears nearer and sheerer the lightning rapid song of many feet, nearer and nearer still. Okay, so I'm going to stop that there because I'm only halfway through that poem, and I'll come back and read the rest of it later. Now, here is another one by Charles Harpur, A Midsummer Noon in the Australian Forest. Not a sound disturbs the air. There is quiet everywhere. Over plains and over woods, what a mighty stillness broods. All the birds and insects keep where the coolest shadows sleep. Even the busy ants are found resting in their pebbled mound. Even the locust clingeth now silently to the barky bough. Over hills and o'er plains, quite vast and slumberous reigns. Only there's a drowsy humming from yon warm lagoon slow coming. 'Tis the dragon hornet sea, all bedowed resplendently. Yellow on a tawny ground, each rich spot a not square nor round. Rudely heart-shaped as it were, the blurred and hasty impress there. Of a vermeil crusted seal, dusted o'er with golden meal, only there's a droning where yon bright beetle shines in air. Tracks in its gleaming flight with a slanting beam of light, rising from the high sunshine higher, till its shards flame out like fire. Every other thing is still, save the ever wakeful rill, whose cool murmur only throws cooler comfort round repose. Or some ripple in the sea, or leafy bough where lazily tired summer in her bower, turning with the noontide hour, heaves a slumberous breath ere she once more slumbers peacefully. Oh, 'tis here to lie, hidden from noon's scorching side, in this grassy, cool recess, musing thus of quietness. All right, well, that's all I'm reading out of that book, which was the Penguin Book of Australian Verse, edited with an introduction by Harry Heseltine. And this one here was published in 1972, first published, and it's a great book. What else can I say? Got a very wide range of poets in it. All right, now this one I'll be gentle with. Australian poets 1788 to 1888. This one's again more Charles Harpur. This one's called Dora. It was, I well remember, the merry springtime when young Dora, in the eventide, came singing up the glen, and the song that came up the glen, till one oft-repeated part in a subtle stream of melody ran glowing through my heart. A fond desire long cherished, till then I might control, till then bout what witching stain swift drew it from my soul. Swift drew it from my soul, and she did not say me nay. and the world of love was all the world would to us that happy day. I'm happy now in thinking how happy I was then, when towards the glowing west my love went homeward down the glen, while my comfort surer grew, till methought the old-faced hills all looked as though they were happy too. All happy days for Dora, and I so happy were, all happy for that human love had breathed its spirit there, and had made them conscious grow of the part they were born in that sweet time, that happy long ago. All right, next one, Onward by Charles Harpur. Have the blasts of sorrow worn thee? Have the rocks of danger torn thee? And thus shifted, wrecked like drifted, wouldst thou find a port in time? Vain the quest, that word sublime, God's great one word, silent never, pealeth ever, onward! Hast thou done all loving duty? Hast thou clothed thy soul with beauty? And wouldst rest then, wholly blessed then, in some sunny lapse of time? Vain the hope, that world sublime, God's great one word, silent never, paleth ever, onward! Hast thou won the heart of glory? Hast thou charmed the tongue of story? And wouldst pause then for applause then, underneath the stars of time? Vain the lure, that word sublime, God's great word, silent never, pealeth ever, onward. Truth and virtues hast thou wrought for, faith and freedom hast thou fought for, and then shrieked, for thou thinkest, paid is all thy debt in time. Vain in thought the world sublime, God's great one word, silent never, pealeth ever, onward. From endeavour to endeavour, journeying with the hours forever, of aspiring or acquiring, this, O man, is life in time, urged by that primal word sublime, God's great one word, silent never, pealing ever, onward. The next one. 2. Who would not be a poet? Thus I read in thy proud sonnet to my poetic friend. And unto this my full assent was given. There is not, cannot be under all heaven, aught happier in itself than the which poetry. But who'd not be a poet? Here I pause, forebodingly, my poet friend, because to see all beauty with his gifted sight, to love like him with all the soul, to be when life is morning bright, the very creature of delight, delight beyond control, is still to be like in degree and too sensible of misery and loss of slight and all the weeping shapes of dole. And this truth too, that with saddened heart oft must he from his fellows live apart. For how can men whose every breath of life is drawn from the hot air amidst the strife of pettiest interests of kindred heart, with him who hath built heavenward and apart the structures of his mind, and looking thence over this world-thronged universe immense, is wont all such embroilments to deplore, as as light obscuring vapours, nothing more. What ladder of experience can they build to mount with up into a nature filled with beauty, or by mighty truths inspired, or one even with a bold ambition fired? But least of all in such men can there be devotions chiming into sympathy? Some with pure soul, unsecured and alone, struggling in weariness, unwearied on, unwearied day and night and day towards the far Mecca of its faith away. Yet thus the poet, armed only with the right to life's dishonoured battle, oft must come. The front, instead of valor means despite, with many envy emulation through, and bloating heaven's sacred light, to see unblushing fortune's minions doom, to obloquy through some repute unholy, or some vile and miserable estate, all such as would not trample in the lowly, and basely glorify the falsely great. Yet, if a thought is like this, should mar at times thy tuneful bliss, stronger within these moments will be the spirit of song that still thou mayest sing of eloquent rays, that are sunny thoughts over sunny skies. Thou mayest sing of eloquent eyes that are of sunny thoughts, the ever sunny skies. Yeah, repeated that. Sweet dreams that swarm round honey lips like honey-loving bees, glad birds, fresh flowers, clear streams and trees, all starry bright with golden pips, or with a loud bold chime sing of that braver time, when worldwide justice from her alpine chair shall read at length in the rich reddening skies the gospel of her event and declare the sacred sign of her epiphany there. Amid the purple days, while all true men, the bravely wise, shall seek her there with fearless feet and free, where the prophet peaks arise out of the shadowing mist, the phantom sea of old iniquity. Through dense and rare shall seek her there, breathing with iron lungs the clear keen mountain air of a supreme up-climbing God great liberty. Thee then envy not the splendid watchfulness of Mammon's dupes. Sing thy great rhymes, for those divinest spiritual times our country shall know, and wisely knowing bless. There you go. This one doesn't have a title. Downward through the blooming roofage of a lonely forest flower comes the yellow sunbeams falling like a burning shower. So through heaven's starry ceiling to the hermit's soul's abode comes the Holy Spirit earthward rearing down from God. Next one for Charles Harpur, The Vision of the Rock. I sat upon a lonely peak, a backward river's course to view, and watched the changing shadows freak its liquid length of gleaming blue, streaked by the crane's slow guiding o'er, or checkered to the lofty roar of woods that neath me grew, or curdling dark as high overhead the gathering clouds before the silent scounding breezes fled. Straight I bethought how once the scene spread in its primal horror there, when but some lone birds, wary threen, or howlings from the wild dog's lair, or rush of startled kangaroo, or as near some stealthy savage drew with hunger for his air, or from the stream some murmur and drown broke the dread slumbrous calm of solitude profound, A change came o'er my thoughts behind. A length of coming time I threw, till round me on that rock reclined its fold prophetic vision drew. And purpling like the morning gave mine eyes of freedom's birth to have, a seeming anti-war, as happily in brave promises you store. His country's purer wheel of youthful Hampton soul. All round me villages upgrew, at once with orchards clumped about. The oft between tall pine rows through, some stone mansion's pillared perch looked out, and thickening up from the alley green, where rustic groups in dance were seen, cause came merry cry and shout, while from the tall groves beyond the cheer of maidens' laughter broke in rich wavelets near. And in the gusts that overpassed, the stir of neighbouring cities came, whose structures in their distance massed proclaimed their opulence and fame o'er fields of ripening, plenty viewed, or hills with white flocks fleeced and strewed with herds that grazed the same, while on the paven roads between the crowding chariots came with rapid rolling din. Now, gaining depth, the vision lay around my being like a law, so that my spirit might not say, but all was real that I saw. I mark a youth and maiden passed by love's sweet power, alone elude the rest. And they nearer drew the list, the vow that each imparts, folded within the spells of harmonizing hearts. But suddenly, a grim-faced sire strides with a fatal wrath between, with that cold whiteness of his eye, which in the bad alone is seen. Alas, this world can never be a poet's Eden utterly. 'Twill be what it hath been, and long as love's rich heart is red, and beauty's eyes are bright, so long shall tears be shed. They pass, and lo, a lonely boy with wandering steps goes musing by, glory in his air and joy, and all the poet in his eye. And now, whilst rich emotions flash his happy life as cloud hues blush in morning's radiant sky, he sings to the charmful sound, troops of angelic shapes thrown into being round. But neath a sombre cypress tree, and clad in garbs of kindred gloom, a mother and her child I see, both mourning over a loved tomb. Ah, life hath ever been a brief, mixed dream of glory and grief, its earliest, latest doom, that heart in which love's tide first ran, descends with its wrist to every child of man, now turning sea with locks all grey, a form, majestic wisdom true illumes his brow, the power to weigh all worth and look all semblance through. And stately youths of studious mien, children of light with humours seen, his audience who attend the speaking stage along, and hearken to the wisdom of his manna-dropping tongue. And now doth his late utterances throw a sacred solemnising spell o'er scenes that yet no record know, round names that now I may not tell. But there was one, too long unknown, whereat, as with a household tone upon the ear it fell. Each listener's speaking eyes were given to glisten with a tear and turn awhile to heaven. Thus night came on, 4 hours had flown, and yet its hold the vision kept, till lulled by many a dying tone, it laid me on the rock and steep slept. And now slept. And now the moon hung big between two neighbouring summits, sheathed with sheen, when all with dews bewept, and roused by loud's coming gale, I sought our campfire's glow in the darkling vale. All right, well, there's some epic poems there from Charles Harpur, one of our great early poets. I've gone Thundercloud. Leave a comment to say where you're watching from. How about that? Give it a thumbs up too, please, because it helps the metrics and it means that other poets and other people interested in poetry can get to see this. Don't forget the Poets on the Mountain Festival. Don't forget the Rhymers Variety Show. And don't forget tomorrow night is Wednesday Words. Here, from here, the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame. We'll see you here. Goodbye.